So again, kind of like to welcome Professor Kavita Vemuri to DIGRA India formally, and we're all looking forward to her fantastic work. And we kind of we have been kind of working on various kind of areas of video games, but we've also missed out quite a few, and this is really one such, and we really want to engage with her work. So Professor Vemuri is a professor, assistant professor at the International Institute of Information Technology, IIIT Hyderabad, and she's been a senior research scientist there until 2017. And she has 20 years of research, engineering, new product technology development. She's been the principal investigator for 4 funded projects, and set up startup incubator and research in cognition and perception. She's also the founder head of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at IIIT, founder and head technology counselor of the Technology Development Center at CII Chennai. And she's been an MSME technology assistant. She's also been at the MSME Technology Assistant Center. She's been an advanced research scientist in 3M's corporate research labs in Austin, Texas, Austin, in the optical devices program. She's a research engineer at Rational, now IBM, and also been at Converse Technologies and Galactic Technologies in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And she works on technology transfer, neuro rehabilitation, game systems. I think we might hear about some of that today. And also she's been working on the virtual sand table to Army signals and course in Ahmednagar. And then she's been working on serious games designed for special children transferred to autism dementia centers. So, and she has 3 patents in the US and the world, 1 Indian and 2 design patents. So once again, kind of, we are very, very honored to have Professor Vemuri with us, and welcome to DIGRA India, Professor Kavita Vemuri, and we look forward to your talk.
Thanks a lot, Souvik, and please just call me Kavita, all of you. That's a very long and generous introduction. So gaming has been, so just to cut to gaming, gaming is something that I think it started in 2012-13 when I went to UCLA. So just got really interested to see these huge spaces with lots of young, old, age doesn't seem to be a matter there. Designing games, thinking about games, just actually sitting for long hours and fighting over with post-it notes. And it's something that we don't see in India. So I was very interested. I had gone there for my neurosciences. So I got into it and never looked back, because it's very challenging. It just keeps you going. The rest of them seems to be research papers and doing research work, but game is something that actually, designing a game is something that really creative. But then the realities of research is so that we need to also come down and say, okay, what are you going to apply it for? So we started looking at clinical conditions. That means talk to a lot of doctors, because there were a couple of them who came first. Actually, I should not take credit for saying I went and found it, but there were doctors who came to our labs, because we had a lot of equipment. I have some of those which can be used for medical purposes, and we actually helped them out. And they asked if there was any way we can motivate the patients to do their maybe motor therapy, maybe actually give better data, so that it's not like you asking this patient if they can move their hand or their limb at some angles, but you actually are getting the data from a much more objective way. So it got us thinking, and then we started looking at what are the kind of games available across the world. And of course, this is not a new field. It's not that we are the first, but we worked on a few things which are very specific to the Indian continent, and which I just want to show a little bit of what the research we do. And I'm sure there are a lot of ideas that I can get from all of you, and would be more than happy, because this is all our research that we do in our lab is open source, by the way, except for devices that we build, which is tech transferred. Games are usually all open source. We actually don't keep them with us. We just put them somewhere on the GitHub somewhere, and people download it across the world. They've modified it. They give us credit sometimes they don't, but that's fine. So I'm just going to take you over some of the challenges that we actually faced when we started designing games for clinical purposes, and also a few examples of what we do in our lab. Okay. So for health especially, these are the areas which games have been used. Gamification is another word. I will talk only about games. I don't get into gamification so much, because when I say a game, it's something that is designed completely. It's not something that you add later to just kind of bring in a few aspects as a game element, but actually design the game towards it. But people have developed games for monitoring health. This could be all your games that nowadays people play in gyms, where you wear your wearables and you play a game and everything is monitored. Susceptibility, that means there's also a lot of work and interest, and this is a very important area, that is, it catches you much before your symptoms start. So mental health is an area that people are looking at. There's a whole team in cognitive science, two of them who are working in mental health from the cognitive part. So I'm actually trying to help them design games for both mental health and also for abuse, drug abuse, substance abuse. Detection. Can games actually be used to detect certain conditions which maybe even the patient or the person is himself or herself not aware of? And the doctor can actually detect it by the data that we generate from playing a game. Rehabilitation is huge across the world. People use games for rehabilitation. This could be anything. Motor rehabilitation is just only one part of it. Alcohol rehab, drug rehab, post-drug abuse rehabilitation. A lot of good games available. Even juvenile justice system is now looking at how can we rehabilitate juveniles, and games is one of the mediums to do it. So they do have a lot of training and counseling, but games are a very powerful medium to actually get them engaged. Some of them are, can be used to bring out some of the biases, their understanding, their angers, their abuse, and their conflicts with themselves and with society also. Disability, of course, that means we kind of help. Maybe the games can be used to convey something. So this is something very, very new. Pre-symptomatic, it's something that we can measure by games, by the way they play. I'll show you some of the examples that we have used to even detect arthritis before it actually starts. So I was one of the patients there. Clinical conditions, many clinical conditions, like mostly in the eye, hearing, and some in the recent times, people have started looking at the post-COVID fog, the brain fog. They've been actually looking at games as a way in which you can see if there's a long-term chronic disease that is setting in. I haven't gone into that particular aspect of it because there are very few cases that doctors are also seeing in our Indian hospitals. And of course, in treatment and therapy, that means games actually can be used in treatment and therapy. I'm not adding another major factor, which a lot of companies which are looking into, and that's skill training. So there are a lot of companies already doing it. So I actually didn't include that here. So the question is, why games? This is a question that everybody asks. And also, I just forgot to mention, anybody has a question, please, you can ask me anytime. I can talk forever, or I can stop and answer your questions. So the question that everybody asks is, for clinical conditions, why games? So the very first thing somebody says is, are you trivializing the clinical condition by saying play games? So motivation is the very first thing I actually encountered when doctors themselves use this word. They said that, how do I get somebody to be motivated to actually do their physical exercises? The very first set of doctors that we actually talked to were doctors running stroke, post-stroke, those with paralysis, and they had a problem where the patients were not motivated enough to actually do their exercises. So the therapist turns the back and then the patient stops moving. So motivation was one that the doctor said. Engagement for a very long time, it's very painful and difficult to actually do these do any exercises post-stroke. Even many of us find it very difficult to do exercises without any medical conditions. So engagement was what they also mentioned. The third one was something that we noticed. We found that when they were playing games, it actually reduced inhibition. And when I actually mentioned one case we had, I will talk about how the women patients, they were actually very skeptical to actually do our exercises. One, they said their avatar looks not Indian. I don't run, so why is your avatar running? So we actually did some designs for them, but I'll come to that later. But what we found was, once we designed a game that they liked, when they started playing, they lost their inhibition. So the movements that they thought others will make fun of, they were able to do these movements because they were now not looking at the people around them, but they were actually looking at the screen. So it was something very interesting for us. And we also got from the doctors that sometimes patients don't tell them all the conditions. So unarticulated conditions, something very small, like their hand, the upper limb, that part of it works, but from elbow down, there is a small condition. That means there is a small lag. So how do you catch this lag? So you do have equipment that catches it, but it could be a one-time measurement. But if I actually make them play in the game and I'm actually making them use the wrist or from the elbow down, then I can actually get this conditions. Feedback, games are wonderful for feedback, especially for clinical conditions, something that keeps them motivated. You actually have to keep giving them. This was something that we debated about. Our doctor said that is feedback good? They may actually get dejected if they don't do well. But what we found, and we argued again and said, give them the feedback and consider them to be a partner in the whole therapy process rather than somebody who is just a receiver. And they love the feedback part. So if they are told you're doing very well, you just have to move a little more, or oh, you've climbed 20 steps, you have to climb 20 more. And this actually helped them. And they were even, some of them were very keen to see the kind of signals that we were getting. Some of our sensors give them raw signals, and they were actually very interested in seeing those signals. Remote monitoring is something that we and others are pushing for, because the way we have built it, it's completely remote. The data goes to the doctor. We built the whole app, the entire chain, and something that we incorporated. And it, of course, putting up a system like this in any clinic helps the physical therapist. We are short of therapists in this country, and everybody kind of knows it. You go to any hospital, short of therapists, good therapists, and caretakers are stretched. If you see the clinics that we have gone to, it's actually the caretakers who are doing everything. The therapist just stands there. So that means an entire family has to move from wherever they are to take care of one person, and that's a lot of load, both financial load and emotional load. Scientific assessment, and of course customization. Games help us customize a lot of things, and that's the most important factor. I'll show you a few examples of what we did, which the instruments that they had could not customize, but we were able to do it. So what are the opportunities in India? This actually, I don't have to go through, all of us know it. It's like something that every paper, every newspaper actually talks about it. Motor movements, post paralysis, we have a huge problem in India. Any injury, any paralysis, any of those conditions, it's taking so long. It's 1.5 years in India to actually get coarse movements, but it just takes around 4 to 5 months in the Western countries, at least, to get the coarse movements. It's because of the way our centers are and the kind of attention that you need to give them. So motor movements, cognitive abilities, there are a lot of people working on autism and ADHD in India. Some of them are from research, post-research games. They're well-researched, documented, but a lot of them are not. And that's a little bit of a scare. I get a couple of them every week to say, can you look at this game? And I somehow feel that they haven't actually understood the brain mechanisms, what happens in autism, ADHD. It's almost like, they haven't thought through the process. But there's a lot of need for building games for patients who have dementia. We have done that in the past. We just stopped it recently because we were not able to get enough students to work on it. Mental health, of course, it's the latest in the bag. We have done a lot of eye and clinical testing, and I'll show you one slide that I have included. We started off with gaming as a way to test actually children's binocular vision anomalies, and it worked. I mean, it was something that we just did. We put it in a clinic and it worked, so it was good. Skill training, of course, there are a lot of companies working on it. There are very few companies or very, very little research in actually building these things, especially for motor movement. I work on stroke patients from the brain level, looking at brain changes across the period, and very few. So I have to do everything. I have to do all the complete scanning across whatever 1 year or so, plus build the games, test them, and also do the neuroplasticity kind of a testing. So it would be nice to have more people working on pure games, working on actually supporting even at the clinical level. So I apply this for, I call it applied games for especially clinical condition. I call it the 7 nodes. Clinical conditions are very important. We can't build a game assuming that every hospital looks like an Apollo's entrance or any of the private hospitals. Most of the people, we started off with a very, very small clinic, and the doctor, the very first thing he told me was, if you build something for Apollo, don't even come back here. Or Apollo type of hospital. Sorry, I don't mean to just identify Apollo. He said, I want something that works in my clinic. And he showed me a basement, a very small basement, and he just charges 100 rupees per hour for a therapy session. He said, if you can build something for them, then come back to me. If not, don't. So the clinical condition, of course, the clinical condition in the sense, both at the disease level and the clinic where it is set, please, we need to know that. The patient, every patient is so different, especially in clinical, and that makes it a challenge. Usually we build games, we build it for mass, and we can't do customization. It's very expensive. But if you do enough research, for stroke or for ADHD or autism or for arthritis or osteoporosis, even in the motor movement, you actually would know the conditions and know what patients really want. Doctors, the good news is the past at least 4 or 5 years, I started working on this in 2012, 13, and people just didn't, doctors were not even listening to me. Then finally I got one doctor from CMC, and then after that it's been kind of good because we have established a rapport now. The doctor is very important. The doctor says, because these are not something that you can go and sell it and tell a patient, oh, use this, you'll get well. No, The patient will only take what the doctor tells him or her to take. And hence, we should know the doctor. We also should know how it is used, as I mentioned before, and the technicians will be running it. So you can't build you can't make expensive devices, you can't have expensive controls, many controls, and tell the technician you have to turn this plus this and then hit this and then hit that and something will come. After the first and second hit, that guy is already lost. So we usually get the technician in and we tell them, okay, so you only have to do one button. Okay, you start it with one button and something happens, just turn off the main power. It's okay. If it hangs up, you just turn off the main power. So we cannot kind of tell him to go to the command control and hit something. So we just can't do that. And of course, this is always the challenge, know how much one will pay for it. This is a major challenge, but it's something that we always have to be aware of. Who will pay for it is one. Maybe an NGO or something, because some of these things can't be made any cheaper, but yeah, but we also need to be aware. Network and physical layer is a major thing, another major issue, but it's improving now. I think post-COVID, the doctor at least told me that even smaller villages in Andhra Pradesh, where we had installed 1 or 2 systems, is giving him data, because he said suddenly network seems to have improved there. So that's good news for us. So how do I design a game for this? One second, am I missing a slide? No, okay. Sorry. So how do I take all the principles that we know in game design, the theoretical principles of game design? How do I talk about space? How do I talk about actions, rules, and design for something so, it seems to be almost like, I want a blockbuster, but I don't want all these elements in the movie. It's just impossible. But over time, we have realized few things from just the movements that we want. For example, we can't make a game which has continuous spaces, because they cannot keep either the lower limb or the upper limb cannot be continuous, in the sense they cannot keep an action or hold a finger in a position for long. So suppose I'm giving WASD, they cannot keep their fingers on WASD. So what we do is we ask them to actually tap. So it actually serves 2 purposes. One, they're tapping, that means they're actually making a move. And second, it's not kind of frozen in space there. So discrete space. So it's so fundamental that we have to go to that level of understanding how to build the game. Actions, any avatars we build, very grounded. You put any supernatural powers on them, like flying, they won't like it, because it reminds them of their own conditions. So we kind of keep away from it. Very simple rules. You have to run, you have to pick up these coins, or you're running, you pick up these coins, you stop, and you can collect a health bar, and then you can continue running. So very simple rules. And every time you hit a block, if you hit the block, you will get a penalty. So the rules are almost like just 2 lines, nothing more than that. And we have not done any story at this time, but we have only heard from the patient saying that, can you make this story for me? So recently one of the patients asked me, can you make this Chandamama story kind of a thing in this one? I like solving puzzles. So I took the old Chandamamas and looked at the Vikram and Betal. So there are a lot of these questions kind of a thing. I'm not literature. I'm finding it very difficult to do it, but some of you are, and I think that's something that is very interesting. So the patient said that I like to also solve puzzles and I like stories and things like that. So how do I put a story into a game which also requires me to do action, a lot of action, movement, and a specific moment? Okay. So that's something that's very interesting. And all assets and objects have to be relatable. They are so picky. They say your avatar doesn't look like me. So if you're saying I am controlling the avatar, so your avatar looks like some Western person. So can you make it somebody like us? So we actually did for later on. We haven't still ported it, but we have a motion capture studio. So we kind of did the whole skinning and we put Indian faces. And now we have to port that avatar onto the game. Color balance, don't use grays and blacks. We did this in the beginning because we thought that if you build the whole thing with minimum colors, maybe to be faster in terms of color rendering, but they just hate grays and blacks. They don't like anything that looks, it kind of depresses them. Low saturation, no jarring colors, also they don't like. And large fonts, anything that requires large fonts. It's more because of the type of games we build. The screen is far away, so we need large fonts. You can provide challenges, provide levels, minimize surprises. They can't move so fast, so we minimize surprises. And interfaces that we use actually are highly customizable. We use a lot of sensors for two things. One is the sensors, the data from the sensors is actually what is moving the game, but we also use feedback. So I won't go into each one of these things because they're very easy to understand. Biggest challenges we have is balancing all of the above and acute skepticism. I don't blame the patients because they're already they have very low levels of enthusiasm. Any stroke kind of brings you down a lot. Any medical condition. So they are not sure that this will help. But I had wonderful two students who just went after them. He used to go and sit with them for hours together, explain the whole thing. And after around a month of doing this, he kind of convinced all the patients to actually do this. So I think it just inertia is one in this. Of course, they're kind of not in a state to think of something new. And financial conditions, bandwidth, cost of CPU, these are bigger challenges, more from the technical side. So all the games that we have built, we had to actually reduce most of the rendering so that GPUs are not used. So we just had to use it has to run on a CPU. So I'm just going to give you a couple of our research examples, but before that, any questions, be happy to take.
Are there any questions so far for Kavita, or shall we take them all at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Okay. So what is the, I just mentioned what are the kind of the contrast between rehab centers outside India. So this is outside the country, you would have these balance beams. So you have a therapist who's trained and you have all these balancing beams, which actually speed up the process, especially those who have spinal cord problems, lower limb support problems. This is the rehab center that we work in. There's nothing, there's just the same kind of an exercise is done by the patient by just holding on to a rod. It's just that, there's nothing else. So this is a motivation, self-motivation. There's a mirror and the patient walks up and down. Of course, there are expensive places. I think this is one in Kolkata. There are a few, but they're very expensive for any patient, anybody who is in the lower social economic status to actually even go for these therapies. So the same thing. I mean, you have for something as simple as picking up with a spoon. We don't have anything like that. So I actually can see that there is like a spring and a hook, and this is all the therapy instruments that a patient has here. So the spring just moves the hands up and down. So there's nobody there to even help. And I can go examples after examples, but you get the idea. So now how do we move from a therapy session like this to something a little more interesting? So when we started off, we actually did the whole in a different way. Instead of just putting a game, but we also put all the sensors to the game. That means the entire control of the game is through the sensors that are connected, and everything, all data, of course, goes through the internet and is displayed in a remote place. We also kind of made a decision to use very inexpensive sensors itself. nothing expensive, no, not even a Kinect, because Kinect by then had actually gone out of production and we didn't use them. Initial games had it, but then we stopped it. So what were the kind of games? So this was our initial take where we had this avatar. So the games are very simple. And what is the addition that we did was, this is a special mat. This is our first prototype. So they are actually, these are sensors, load cells. And the entire control of this avatar who's actually running on this track is based on all the exercises that this particular patient has to do, which is transfer of load, weight from one foot to the other, because that the doctor understands that the load is transferred. He's a 62 years, a 63-year-old patient who has paralysis on the left side. And they have to move one foot forward and back. So this is a balancing kind of exercise. And all we did was made some kind of a running game, not very different from your temple run kind of a thing. And the only time, at every regular intervals, they have to actually shift their weight from one foot to the other and move forward and then back. Okay, very simple. You would ask, so that's so simple as an exercise, but that's the very first step towards for the doctor to know that the patient is able to do it. So this patient was able to do after the first or the fifth round without holding on to any of their, usually they have a L-shaped, U-shaped stand. So he was very enthusiastic and he just said, I just want to get going. So tell me what you want me to do and we'll do it. And this whole mat, all the controls, everything we designed, we built, we tested. It took us a long time, different kinds of sensors. And we also had to make sure that some of them wear braces for the legs. So you can't have very expensive unbreakable sensors. So padding the mat and using the cell, very small voltage comes from load cells, but we amplified, we had to use industrial amplifiers and then run the program. We also tested this on a couple of multiple sclerosis children, but this was difficult for us to do. And children are in another clinic, so we kind of stuck to adults and those with stroke. So now I'll show you something else for the complete hip, pelvic, knee, ankle, and thigh muscle. So I want all of you to kind of look at this game. I'm just going to play a demo of it. Leave all the questions on why religion, why do we want to encourage, or why do you want to discourage, what are we trying to prove with this game? I had these questions, and when we presented it in a conference, I'll take your questions and I will take them in the right spirit, but I just want you to kind of understand where it is placed after. Let me just play it, so maybe it will just help. Let's do next. Let me know if you can hear the. So this is the introduction. I mean, every patient will have their own ID, so it's all.
केशवाय नमः श्री श्रीनिवासं माधवाय नमः श्री
लाल चढ़ायो अच्छा गजमुख को चोंदिल लाल विराजे सुत गौरी हर को हाथ लिए गुड़ लड्डू साई सुरवर को महिमा कहे न जाए लागत हूँ पद को जय देव
पद्मनाभाय नमः.
Okay. I have to go back to my. Okay. So this was designed because did all of you get to hear the music also?
Dr. Vemuri, we could listen to the audio, but we couldn't see the video actually.
Ah, okay. One second. Let me share. Can you see the video now?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, yes.
కేశవాయ నమః శ్రీ శ్రీనివాసం మాధవాయ నమః శ్రీ
सिंदूर लाल चढ़ायो अच्छा गजमुख को चोंदिल लाल विराजे सुत गौरी हर को हाथ लिए गुड़ लड्डू साई सुरवर को महिमा कहे न जाए लागत हूँ पद को जय देव जय देव
పద్మనాభ.
Okay. So can you see my PPT slide now, or
No, not yet. We are still stuck on the video. So maybe if you.
yeah, now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we had a lot of questions on this when we presented, but let me tell you the genesis of it. Maybe that will kind of put the context. So we had a few women who were not taking up to our games, and then they said, I said, what is it that you really want to do? And they said, if I get well, I want to climb the Tirupati temple. Or some of you from the south know that the Tirupati has these staircases. I mean, the steps that a lot of steps, and you can go up. And then she said, I would never go up because I've got a stroke and I don't know if I'll get well. So we just came back and we were talking about it, and I said, why don't we just simulate the entire Tirupati, this one? So we got somebody in our lab who went to Tirupati, and so you can actually see that there is a map that shows the progress too. As much as possible, we stuck to it. So what is it that how does the game move? The game moves when the patient is actually, once again, the patient is actually on a stepper motor. So the other thing about our games is we used all the equipment that is already there in the clinic. All we did was to put up different sensors, and we take both the proximity sensors, and we actually, in this, it's not there, but we also take the EMG sensor because that's something for the doctor. But the sensors that are attached to the stepper motor, every step in that game is actually a step that the patient takes here, which is then transferred to the game, and the person actually climbs the stairs. So we put the music and everything, the side temples and all. So what do you think were the obvious questions we got? We called it power of belief. Our paper is called Power of Belief. So the question that we got was, are you encouraging, are you giving people a false belief or a false hope that God will do something? This was, of course, in a conference it was in US only. And I actually didn't go for conference. Used to students go and present. And I was very happy to hear what my student apprentice said. And he said, I don't think any of us have a right to talk about belief and hope if we are not patients. So he's from Chandigarh, Ludhiana, and I was very impressed with what he answered, because the organizer called me and he said, your student gave a very good reply. And it's true. When we design games, sometimes, especially for patients, especially for clinical conditions, we shouldn't be actually talking about what we believe. We sometimes have to put aside many of our own beliefs. At the end, what do we want? We want them to move. We want them to exercise. We want the doctor to get the data, and we want to actually help the patients be motivated. And the music was the biggest thing for them, and they really enjoyed the music. Of course, for our research paper, we tested this with both non-clinical non-clinical people and clinical people. And just to do a comparative analysis, We also built one, which we call it the trekking game. We removed all the temples. The music was different. Instead of actually having a side temple, we had a place see out. It was easy to do. We just took out all the artwork in the game, and we tested this both with normals and with patients, and we found, of course, that if you actually look at the number of steps that they climbed, good number even in the non-patient category and the patient category too. Sorry, I didn't put that column, which actually had some of the patients were able to go up to 200 to 300 steps in one go, and that's a lot. That means movement of the leg. And they really, really liked the game. I was so surprised to see the response to it. And it's one of the games that has been downloaded the most from our site, the source code. We also built one where we changed, the concept is the same, but we built it for a Goa church in Goa, which has this staircase, and that was only for one patient who was from the Christian faith and who wanted something similar. So, and that's the flexibility that we need to have. Who will do it? Will a startup do it? No, but can we do it in the research academy? All enthusiasts who want to design games, we can do it, and then they can actually do the rest of it. That means they can take it to market and build it, but the initial cost of building it can be done here in research organizations. So that's my take on how to build these kind of games. And yeah, I mean, power of belief, still I get a lot of comments about it. And there are people in India who also actually wrote to me saying, there were, of course, there are two different groups. There's one who really liked it, and there are others who said, you should not put anything religious, it's blasphemy and things like that. And I said, no, it's just game, it's a game. You want to call it Tirupati, call it. If you don't want to call it Tirupati, call it something else. Just staircase, going up somewhere. So this is how we test every game. And this is something that research groups can do, which startups can't do. This is another game that we built for the upper limb. Again, you get the idea. It's a very simple game. This is your, let me just do a new share. Okay, I think there's not a lot of time. So I'll quickly explain. I can put this, I'll keep the videos also out for share. So this is a very simple game. You just have to move the basket and the apple falls into it. But what we actually built after looking at all the systems that they had was, this is our first prototype. So the movement of the hand is captured by sensors, and this ball here has a sensor embedded inside. So that's for grip. So, and you not only move your hand, we can adjust these sensors so that the movement of the hand goes from 20 degrees to all the way across, like almost 60 to 80 degrees. And everything is captured here. So your hand that you're moving here, the movement it makes is equal to the movement you make on this board. And this embedded sensor here is for grip. So those who have to actually use pressure, get tactile. So we now have the startup that we transferred this part of it to, they have a better device in this very first testing device. So the total cost of any one of those, the whole things that we see, ours was only 7,000 rupees. We don't take anything, so we don't consider the game cost, but our entire electronics part of it that we design is so anybody wants to take it, they can take it and build this here. So we also tried a lot of HMD, VR HMD, and we did try this with the multiple sclerosis, but stroke patients, doctors said no. So we have some volleyball game that we built for this particular patient. He was interested in volleyball, so we just did this for it. We have the game, but we have not tried this on stroke patients. So I don't have a research outcome from this, but we have tried this too. And we have different versions of for different movements of the arms. For example, for arthritis, you actually have to do something like a rowing action. So we have a rowing game, complete. So that I can show you the demo of it, but I'll put the video out. So this is both hands, you row, and then you have to go through a track. So it actually shows you how you go. And we also included one with fishing also. So halfway through, you can even stop and fish. So you have to actually do this. So that's connect. That movement is collected. We did it with the Kinect, but now we're doing it with another webcam and doing image processing. But for the rowing action, we have the sensor. So they use that an exercise machine they have in the clinic, which has this rowing kind of a thing, and that's only transferred there. So bike is another one. All of you know that we have these Excel bikes. So we just designed one for the Excel bikes. So last, we also did one full game, a very simple game for testing for amblyopia. This is using a very old, one of the initial iTribes trackers, which is not in market anymore because I think Google or Facebook bought it, and I don't know why they did that. It was a very inexpensive one. It was just $100. We were very happy. I teamed up with the inventor and we wanted to design these many things for clinical testing. So basically, all of you know how an eye tracker works. It captures the eye movements, your left and right eye. And we designed this game to just test for amblyopia. Amblyopia is a condition which is also called lazy eye. It's when the child doesn't move one of the eyeballs. That's because of a condition behind, or and the usual therapy is they patch the good eye and force the child to move the bad eye. But a better way was this, where we actually capture the movement of the eye and the eye plays the game. So they have to find one of the shapes which is not part of the rest of it, or a color which is not. So this is in 3D actually. They have to wear those 3D glasses, and they have to identify where this funny character is, cat. So we build this as a game, and they get different levels. And this data, which shows where the left eye and the right eye is, all this data is analyzed and sent to the doctor. And the doctor is actually able to do a long-term and diagnosis of it. So this was a very good initiative. And for us, we also tested it in LVPI. But then this company, iTribe, was bought over by, I think, Google, and then we could not continue because this was $100, whereas other eye trackers are really expensive. So we had to stop this, but even this game, we have versions of it. We have different versions of it. So I have actually told you this. I mean, I went through this in the beginning. So we also need games which people relate to. So we built one for 7 stones, part of our EEG studies on stroke patients. So we just did something on 7 stones. You throw a stone, stack of 7 stones. I don't know what it's called in different languages, but they related to that game a lot. Kavim, we are trying very hard because it's a very fine movement, and we are trying to see how we can actually make the striker to be a smart striker. That means it's embedded with sensors, and we can actually sense how much pressure they're applying. There's a long way to go, but something we are trying. And really need a lot of effort from from designers, people who can think of new themes, the clinicians, patients, family, and society. So thanks a lot. It's a completely different talk from what I have seen some of your videos, previous videos, but it's something that I thank Savik to actually inviting me to give this, because I really do talk about it. I don't talk a lot about it because somehow I don't know if it's considered very seriously in India, but I'm hoping that people take this seriously, not just so much for what is the game industry going to do, but it's more for trying to use this media to help somebody, the clinical populations that we usually are never, we ignore them, kind of a thing. So this was the students who actually helped build it. And of course, I have to give a lot of credit to Dr. Rajendra Kumar Eluri. He has a Anurag Rehab Center in the city. he was the first doctor who just simply said, here's my space, take it, you do your research here. We rarely get anybody who actually does that for us. So thank you, thanks a lot. And I would be happy to take any questions.
So thanks a lot, Kavita. This is like fantastic. And I mean, like you said, that our talks are quite different, but just the previous one that we had was actually kind of on accessibility in games. And it's like, it's great that we are having something right after this like this. And like Poonam is already commenting, and Ochinto as well, that we need more of this in India, and we need more recognition for these in India. So, I mean, I'm kind of, the floor is open for questions. Obviously, if you want to just ask, unmute yourself and ask Kavita, and or if you want to type in the chat, then I'll certainly be happy to read out for you.
Yeah, somebody has raised their hand.
Yeah, there's a raised hand. Yes, I can see that. Yes, Rohan, please just unmute.
Yeah, thank you for this like very wonderful talk. I was wondering if you guys have thought about clicker games, the genre of clicker games, as a factor that might help players be motivated for a long time to like keep engaged with their physical activities and stuff.
Yeah, we've looked at a lot of genres, and we need to do a lot of customization, and that's where we can't take something that's already existing. Are there any games that are existing in the genre?
They're like, so clicker games, they usually adapted for like a normal audience, not for like patients specifically. But what the thought process behind clicker games is that there's a lot of gratification going on and progression over the system design. So I don't think I'm aware of specific games that are clinically adapted. And I get the customization bit as well. And one of the things I mentioned is that the games need to be grounded. They cannot be superficial in that sense. So yeah, those are sort of design challenges that might have to be considered. But as just as the power of the genre, I think it might work.
Yeah, thank you. We look at we had this 18 exercises. It's actually the other way around. We started with, the doctor gave us 18 exercises. He said, I have to get them to move their hands, their upper limbs, the lower limbs, and these are the kind of exercises you have to make them do. And actually we fit the games into the exercise movements rather than the other way around, right? I mean, we have only completed 9 for now, and we still have 9 more, and then I ran out of funding, so I am looking for funding, but we need to finish the rest of them. Yes, I will look into it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kavita. That's also really interesting to know. And it kind of connects to my question also, that are you looking at existing video games, adapting existing video games to your work? I think you've already answered it somewhat, especially when you think of the storytelling element, then there's so much in the existing video games. Maybe is it possible to adapt any of this to your work at all? That's one question.
We need to do it. We need to just test it out. It takes, so for example, some of our trials take up to 6 months, right? We actually monitor the patient using this game for 6 months. So every weekly, twice, my student used to go sit there for 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the evening, because they have 2 sessions. So everything needs to be tested. Of course, that's because we have a research agenda, but I think it would be interesting if we can try working out on existing games with stories. And
why I'm saying this is that in this group there are so many people who spend hours and hours on games, and they're all listening to you. And I think if they have any ideas, really, that they might think, there might just be absolutely ideas that you might chuck out. But then if there are any ideas that might be useful, they might just kind of get in touch with you and look, look, ma'am, this is a game that it could just do this, and so on and so forth. But I also wanted to ask you, uh, how was it possible to make that game with such a low budget, the 7,000 rupees game? That was just kind of what you described, and the budget, they were like, I mean,
Yeah, so the 7,000 is for the electronics part, the
yeah.
whole
So
sensor setup.
the other part you just did not, you had funding for, or because
So the game part of it, because we developed the whole thing in our institute by students, right? The
Right.
students develop it.
Okay.
But we did transfer it because when we started putting it in different clinics, there were a few bugs, not few, there were quite a few bugs. So then we had a startup company go live, which is also an alumni of ours, who's a Ravi is an alumni of us. So he kind of helped us. So the cost of the electronics, and it's so modular that it can capture any movement. For example, you can take these sensors, put it on a regular treadmill, and then capture some things. So we actually focused on that because that's what the doctors wanted. And I take your point that yes, if suppose we had got a lot of developers to do it, the cost would go up. But and hence I'm actually stressing on this need for research labs to develop these things rather than actually asking startups to do it.
I
And we
actually
do the
have
rest.
a more basic question. It's like more a curiosity. How much would that game cost if you were to commercialize it? I mean, because this is like heavily subsidized. What you've just said, really, you've just kind of, it's love labor pretty much.
Yeah.
So what would it cost?
So
what
the
is
startup company which took the head, which actually we have a tech transfer with two companies, and they priced it at 25,000, and total cost, the device cost, and the games they designed and kept, and service cost for almost a year or so.
I mean, we know of these VR games and the other also other kinds of games, but mainly VR games which are used to treat PTSD. Also became very popular after the second Iraq War, and the one thing that they said that they could not do was that they could not create smell, but everything else, they tried to recreate kind of oral and ocular kind of thing, stimuli. But I mean, those games are very expensive. They're really expensive games. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, so development costs, if we the games are expensive because of development costs, right? I mean, that's because the time take to develop these things, the software programmers costs are high. We agree to that, and hence we did this. So we develop everything here. I have a team of students who do it. We do it over like a month's time. I just say that these are what I want, and then they sit and do it for a month. And then the code is written in a very nice way. By now we have kind of done good job. And after that, the startup has to actually only put in one person to do it, just one. So to clean up the code, to make it run on a CPU, things like that.
Okay, Ochinto has Orko Brutto has written up a comment here. Really enriching talk. One thing that got me worried is how some people objected to depictions of specific religious or cultural spaces in some of these experiences. Hopefully, it is not that important in this specific case, but in the commercial context, this sort of mindset can act as a hindrance, preventing innovative use of such spaces.
Yeah, it is. So I was surprised. I mean, I was expecting it, but I was not to the point of the kind of. We got more comments about are we playing with belief and creating false hope from the Western reviewers, Western audience. And in Indian spaces, when we showed this, actually the Dr. Rajendra Kumar is a very good marketing person for me. He shows it in all his orthopedic and other conferences. A few doctors said, oh, how can you use this? This is blasphemy. The patients will be wearing shoes and they'll be, on the step over systems. And yes, we do face it. I mean, this is something that I don't know how to address it unless, we kind of go head on with them. But I just hope that people don't bring this up. I mean, I that's why I keep saying, please come. I tell everybody, just come to a stroke patients or a clinic, and then let's talk after that. Okay. So it's just all these people have very strict views about religion. I just hope it doesn't get to that level. Only one company where we showed this game and we asked them, can you kind of take it to the market, commercialize it, we'll give you the rest of the instrument. They said no. They said that it's on this chord and you're using this music. And we got permission. Actually, we got copyright, some of them, for the music part of it. And we didn't have any problem there. But they said, no, we'll get into trouble.
It's actually a reality, though. I mean, with Sony got into trouble with Hanuman Boy Warrior because which it released for free with PlayStation 2. I mean, but only abroad, not so much in India. But there's all these kind of issues around portraying religious figures here, especially. I mean, so that's one. I mean, in other even in kind of mainstream game design. But I was just wondering if anyone else has more questions. I can see there is, okay.
Also, smartphones. Yeah. So we have the only problem with using a smartphone as a display is the patient as such has, can't see the screen very well. So we actually have in the clinic that we now have, we almost have a 42-inch TV screen, because a very small phone, they're not able to actually see it. And this applies only to the motor kind of games that I'm talking about. Yes, we are building games for mental health, and they're all smartphone based, and they're all actually in their VR with smartphones, and we connected to for the interactions and the movements. We are actually using, of course, all of Arduinos, and we are connecting it to a mobile phone. So yes, they can be used, but for some exercises, especially the motor kind of an exercises we are talking about, no. Smaller displays, yes, like a tablet or something. Yeah. So anybody in Hyderabad, please come by sometime to our lab. Please do drop by, and I would be very happy to have as much help as possible, especially when we are kind of thinking of games. We are very technical people, let me tell you. The very first thing in the game is I look at the math of it. And others, all my students look at how do I program this, make this, but we don't have the skills to actually look at stories, narratives, stitching them all together. It becomes difficult, but we have everything that anybody wants to design a game for. We have motion captures, so we can take expressions, faces, we can skin and build a new avatar and things like that. So
yeah, I must tell you that when I gave a talk for Kavita, showed them the snakes and ladders board, and the first thing she did was the statistical kind of analysis of how many the probability and the combinations, basically. And anyway, so that's but I think this is also something that is so important behind designing games: the code, the possibilities, the algorithm, the space of possibilities, as we call it in narratives, when we look at game narratives. And I'm sure we have two people who are already in Hyderabad, Shobik and Poonam, so they might be able to connect with you. And I think
anybody else, just come. The website I have is very old, so don't bother about it. I'm very lazy putting up websites. So but if you connect with me, I will give you the source code too if anybody wants.
Hello, ma'am. This is Poonam. I just finished my PhD from IFLU, and I worked on slow games. And your talk was so fascinating in terms of accessibility, because I think it's just a thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and how slow games, because they are essentially slow, by their very nature, they are quite accessible, because they do not require as much input from the player. And if we can reduce, for example, a game like Gris or Journey, if we can reduce the input that is required from the player even a little bit, more, then maybe I was thinking it could be used in the context in which you use games
Yeah.
for things.
Yeah, it's a very good point. When we reduce the speed of the game, basically we're reducing the rendering costs, right? Re-rendering costs. We are also reducing the flow cost. That means the signal going in the CPU time. So any slow game, it can be actually considered. If we get the source code for it, we just have to customize it.
Correct.
Yeah, there's a couple of companies now which are willing to, they are putting up their source codes too. So something that we can look at. We just have to make it, I don't know what people, when people say India specific, but I'm just using that word. I think what basically they say is something that we relate to. You know, it's either in the games that you play or the avatars that you use, the scenes that you generate. So they wouldn't want a New York landscape style skyscraper, but you show, like one of my students had this idea of building a game based on the Mumbai Dabawalas. So you have to pick up the lunch from different houses as you're pushing a cart. So actually the action in real life is you're pushing something, right? But you have to also pick up. So these are very, very interesting to people.
This reminds me of this game that is going to be released very soon called Venba. And we had the opportunity to interview the game developer. It's about a game. It's about this lady who moved to Canada in the late 1980s, and the game is about cooking and collecting the ingredients of the things that this lady is cooking and kind of recreating her mother's dishes. So it's very Indian in its nature. So I'm guessing that those kind of games could be
exactly. There was actually there was a lot of interest from the patients. Of course, there's a whenever you say cooking, it's always one gender specific, but either way, in games that can make them, you know, make they move. The doctor said that if you can actually make every the pressure cooker to be a smart cooker, like where it has sensors, and then I can actually make them do all this in my in the therapy place. So they're actually cooking,
correct,
but they're also moving. I mean, cooking is a great exercise anyway. So yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, if we can actually say take that game and then say you now have to make. I'm South Indian, so I cannot think beyond sambar. So make sambar.
And Venba is interesting.
The game is about South Indian
food. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it solves the problem. So they have to actually move their hands and you know, all the actions, like you grind. You actually have to grind the coconut and this one. So these actions is what we can capture. And now we are actually not even putting any sensors to. We are using cameras to do it. It's a little expensive on the computational side if you use a webcam, but I think we'll figure it out. But that's beautiful actions. Everything that we do in the kitchen is an action. So for example, the doctor said, do something where a vessel drops so that the person picks it up, you know, bend down to pick up a vessel, and that's an exercise. So yeah, there's very good way to do it.
Yeah, I remember once playing a game on the Wii, flipping burgers. This was at a which you had to just kind of keep flipping burgers, really, and then you had to be a burger chef. But well, there we go. But it's kind of I was just thinking also when you mentioned Kinect. Of course, there's kind of sort of the Nintendo Wii, which was never released sadly in India, but. In Nottingham, when I was working in, we made a kind of an aid for visually challenged people to walk using the Wiimote. So the Wiimote would give out signals, and it would be like a walking stick. So, but it could do many more things, obviously, with the Wii.
Yeah.
But okay, there's more stories.
Yeah, there's one question on the Vikramabeda. Yeah, I'll give you this example. I think for many of you who are in literature who actually works in stories can help. So this was a patient who post-paralysis, you also have speech problem, right? So the kind of the motor action gets a. So we are now looking at two types. One is the patient actually has to tell the answer. So it's like a Zork kind of a game, which is a command prompt game, but based on Vikram and Betal kind of a storyline. So the story comes to some point, and then the patient actually has to speak, and the speech recording is what we have a very good speech engine in our institute. Our speech labs are very good, and we are taking that and trying to actually at least identify a couple of words, because the speech is not good. The diction, the pronunciation is not good. And then we are planning to use that to prompt them again. So it's like a Zork game. If you have played Zork, Z-O-R-K, then it's something like that. And we've just taken the Vikram and Betal story. We have not completed it yet, because the speech engine, everything has to be integrated. Yeah, we are struggling with the story line too. Taking a Chandamama, Vikram and Betal story and converting it into a question and answer kind of a thing with speech in it is not easy. But yeah, if anybody wants to kind of pitch in and help, it would be great. So you can also consider this to be, if anybody is interested, as part of this research initiative that SERB has.
Yes, so we have actually spoken briefly in our group as well.
Yeah.
But once of course, kind of the project proposal comes out, we'll be able to kind of pitch something together. And I also wanted to say that to piggyback on what Poonam said, and that's a really good point about slow games and mental health. If you are looking at mental health, there are so many other games that you could look at from the Games for Change portal. If you're already kind of, it's really, but yeah. So I guess, well, there any more questions? Otherwise, maybe if you want to tell us a little bit about the SERB initiative as well, and then. Oh yes, before your eyes. That's the eye movement. Sorry.
Yes.
Thanks, Poonam.
Yeah. So we the eye movement games we have built for many, even for the RP we have done a few, but yeah, this we played for amblyopia, a couple of games for them.
Before your eyes game just uses your standard webcam, and it makes that an eye, so that's really cool.
So initially we tried, because this the eye tracker not only gives us the eye movements, but we also need the pupil size.
All right. Yes.
So in all our research, we also take the pupil size, because pupil size also in amblyopia or even any binocular vision anomalies, we look at pupillary right reflexes. That means consensual reflexes. So we look at what happens when we shine light in one to the other, this kind of thing. Yeah, but yes, this before your eyes is very nice, because it's very inexpensive, and it's a good game. Yeah.
And the story is very well scripted as well. You have this kind of little portrait that you kind of, you're having to look at and blink at things. And that.
Yeah. The blinking part is very good.
Yeah.
So
I guess, well, if there are no more questions, then we can thank Kavita for the fantastic talk, and hope that she comes back to DIGRA India again. And and we also get a chance to work with you for the SERB initiative or something else, whatever comes up, really, because there's so much potential between narrative, people who spin narratives, and then people who do, also make
Thank
games.
you.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot for actually sitting through a Saturday talk. And I usually don't talk a lot about these games, because very few people even kind of, they ask me questions like, okay, what is the GPU for this, and how much of animation is there in this? And then there's the other set of people who'll ask me, so how much of body movement did the stroke patient recover in 1 week or 2 weeks? So I usually don't talk much, because I say that we'll do the research and we'll publish papers. It's a long way to go. Clinical research takes a lot of time, so it needs patience. But it also needs a lot of people to get together, then we can do this faster. Okay.
So
yes, Poonam, please do come by. I'll take you not only to my lab. I just want to show everybody this clinic that we work in, so that you get an idea of the kind of patients. Language is a major issue, so we use our language engines. So we built one whole game for life on teaching how to do life insurance, and we just plugged in we plugged in the language engines, speech engines. So these are very important things for Indian conditions. I mean, it seems to be like a very small thing, but if we put something which they can't understand, even login, we kind of make sure that it is written and explained in Telugu for the patients that we usually deal with. So yes, please do come by, and I hope to actually have a lot of you helping us with whatever skills you have in game. So thank you.
We will all like to kind of come by and see your labs sometime soon. Just before I end, a very quick announcement. I mean, I've just mentioned that you can all kind of access DIGRA India's work on our WhatsApp, our Facebook, Twitter, and see the upcoming talks, and also on our website, which is more detailed. And also a very quick announcement for those who are in Kolkata or nearby, that there is a board game museum that I'm starting here from the 18th of September onwards. So do have a look if you're interested in board games or talking about board games. Just can let me know. Okay, so thank you again, Kavita.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.
I guess shall we just kind of continue the meeting here, and we'll request all the non-DIGRA India people to leave the Zoom meeting, and then just kind of continue here on Zoom, or shall we go into our WhatsApp group?
Yeah, but I think first we have to stop recording.
Ouch.